How do we feel about Betaflight, open source drone software being used in warfare? Hey everyone, today I am making a very different type of video. Right now I am taking an ethics class for a Master's of Data Science at UVA. I'm also an avid FPV enthusiast. So professor meet the hobby, hobby meet academia. I'm going to be sharing my opinions and small research into a topic titled When Civilian Software Becomes Military Technology, the Ethical Dilemmas of Open Source Betaflight and iNav Software Use in Kamikaze First-Person View Drones. So there are many people who enjoy flying FPV or first-person view drones and fixed-wing RC aircraft. It's a fairly new hobby with mainstream consumer drones only hitting the market 10 or so years ago. It was very much a homegrown from the start hobby, and virtually all flight controller software is open source, most notably Betaflight, iNav, and RGPilot. Flight controller is the brains of a drone. It runs code that controls the motors, camera, video transmitter, and more. Drones require up to 2,000 plus micro adjustments every second to stabilize the drone and make it fly exactly how the pilot is requiring to have it fly. Betaflight is more popular than iNav with an estimated over 100,000 active users. So throughout the video, when I say Betaflight, I'm generally referring to all flight controller software. Betaflight is used throughout the world by hobbyists who fly legally for recreation, who do things like explore nature, cinematography, drone racing, or practice acrobatic freestyle flying. My favorite thing to do is fly tiny flips around the house, often freestyle outside as well. I also can occasionally get a job as an FPV pilot and get paid to film buildings, actors, or events. I spend at least 2 hours a week, if not much more, on this awesome hobby. And throughout this video, I'll just be showing some FPV feed recordings from various drones that I fly to give you an appreciation for how much I enjoy this hobby and how I use it as a way to find friends, adventure, and even therapy. So everything changed when the Ukraine-Russia war broke out a few years ago. Over the last several years, drones have completely taken over as the predominant fighting mechanism of the Ukrainian and also somewhat the Russian army. Bombs or grenades can be strapped to quadcopters that have 7 to 10-inch propellers. They weigh 1 to 3 pounds, and they carry fiber optic cables to avoid counter-drone interference. These drones can be sent sometimes up to 200 miles away to destroy life or infrastructure. Also, FPV drones have had a devastating environmental impact when it comes to warfare. The fiber optic cables used, my drones don't have these, but fiber optic cables that are used for avoiding counter-drone measures cover the countryside, and then batteries with expensive and somewhat unsafe materials are now blown apart all across the warfront. Currently, as far as I'm aware, autonomous flight within Betaflight or iNav is simply using GPS location to fly to a specified point at a certain speed and altitude. At the forefront of flight controller software would be something like AI autonomous flight, which could be as dramatic as drones being sent with software to evaluate and eliminate targets without a human even touching the process. Betaflight and others at this time do not support something like this. However, following Kathy O'Neill et al. In their paper Auditing Algorithmic Risk, we should identify and carefully evaluate the worst case scenarios for an issue like this and proceed carefully. I will also use concepts from this paper later in the conclusion of my project when I discuss the severity of what could happen if this technology is misused by the wrong people and balanced to continuing access to the technology for hobbyists and the general public. Before continuing, I also want to point out that I'm making no political stance in this project. I'm hoping only to evaluate the ethical grounds of open source software being used in warfare. I understand that many people feel very strongly about this issue, and rightfully so. But I am not here to discuss politics, only data ethics and FPV. So getting back to the ethical issue at hand, Betaflight and iNav are commonly used on the front lines of war. Check it out, this Kamikaze FPV drone has the same on-screen display that my little toy drone has. And without a doubt, Ukraine would not be doing as well in this war without drones, even if they would even be surviving at all. Kamikaze drones use software like Betaflight for several things, primarily to control the motors and flight mechanics like my drones do. But Betaflight can do more. It can fly the drone autonomously, it can land the drone autonomously, land or even crash detonate, and it can control servos, which can be used to actuate bomb drops. So that's the background of the issue. Next, let's dive into how I hope to evaluate the ethical dilemma of this situation. As Betaflight users and or developers, how does this make us feel? Should we care that our little baby drone program got repurposed into a device of war. iNav, Betaflight, and others are open source projects. Do we have any control over the situation at this point, or is it too late? I have some personal opinions about the issue, which I will share at the end, but I wanted to collect some of my own data. So I took a poll on the Betaflight Facebook group page, which has 30,000 members. I was really happy that within about 48 hours, I got over 100 responses to my poll. So let me explain what I polled. I titled the poll, "How do you feel about Betaflight being used in warfare?" I posted 4 response options. I was amused to see that several people added their own poll option, which several others also voted for. I think that's great that they did this, but I'll try to fit the responses into my original 4 buckets, which were, by the way, number 1, no ethical concern. We should continue developing and using Betaflight with no regard for how it is used. If someone does something unethical with it, that is their problem. Number 2, minor ethical concern. This issue worries me, but I don't think anything needs to change. Number 3, moderate ethical concern. It is problematic that drones with this software can be used lethally. We should consider limiting features like waypoint navigation, autonomous flight, servos that can be used for bomb releases, and long-range features. While these features are great for hobbyists, we don't really need them, and think that the harm is greater than the benefit. And then finally, major ethical concern. All open source drone software should be discontinued. It is better to limit hobbyists in exchange for no harm being caused by drones in the long run. I tried to carefully craft the responses to cover the entire spectrum of how people might feel about the issue. I hope that the questions were fair and unbiased. I recognize the moderate concern needed a little more explaining, which I felt was necessary, but hopefully did not bias any poll responses. This poll is still open, so the final results may vary. Also, please participate in the comment section, which I think has some very thoughtful comments. But at the time of this video, the poll breakdown is as follows. Overwhelmingly, people do not have an ethical concern about this issue. One commenter stated that it's a non-starter. The project is open source, and even if developers deleted the project today, you can't take down the thousands of copies of this code that have been distributed across computers and drones worldwide. I think this is an excellent point, and it's wildly true. But let's continue. About 25% of the respondents expressed some ethical concern, though. Most of that group seemed to feel worried about drone use in warfare, but feel that nothing needs to change, or maybe nothing can change. Pollsters with this viewpoint, I think, are likely pragmatic about the situation. There isn't really much you can do, which is a position I respect. Next, the moderate and major concern groups are quite small. It's a position that doesn't serve our interests as hobbyists, since it discourages or eliminates new development on the project. If you come at this from the position with the mindset that recreational drones should be eliminated or highly restricted in the skies to keep others safe, it's a position that many would call anti-freedom. I did not mention this in the poll. To clarify, features such as autonomous flight beyond the pilot's line of sight is illegal in the US, and many of these features, some of the more specific features that I'm discussing are very cool, but they are illegal to use. So let me highlight some of my favorite comments. This comment says, "War blurs lines, but using open source projects to cause harm isn't what we stand for. We like to think we're in control of technology, but we're not. It's going to get much worse." The next comment, unless Betaflight starts to develop features specifically for warfare or at the request of a nation's military, I would say no ethical concern. The tool was not bred for war, it was bred for the sake of those who wish to fly. I do not scorn my mother's kitchen knife for sharing lineage with a bayonet. We don't work with, next comment, we don't work with any company sanctioned. This one is from an actual developer, which I think is really great that they commented. We don't work with any company sanctioned, obviously making military-only equipment or military-only features. At the end of the day, we only want custom firmware. Anyone wanting custom firmware would simply fork it and make the changes themselves. The team is from all around the world, and there are differing opinions on this topic. Officially, we don't support warfare or sanctioned companies. And then the final comment that I'll highlight is negative concern. That means it's good, and you can't stop it anyway. I really appreciate the broad feelings that people feel about this. So where does this lead us? I will next share my opinions on the subject. If you like, please pause the video and firmly form your own opinions before continuing. I put myself in the moderate concern group. I feel this way due mostly to something that I haven't yet discussed, and that's terrorism. Somewhat selfishly, I am the most concerned about the lethality of drones as it might affect my own life. Unfortunately, I think it is alarmingly easy now to buy an off-the-shelf drone that can cause serious harm. I specifically won't share how to do this and what you would have to buy and do, but if you think about it, a drone can be as lethal, if not more lethal, than a traditional weapon. Its pilots can easily remain anonymous, and it can be deployed from and to anywhere. Very few places in the world are protected from an aerial attack by a drone. Many places, in contrast, many places have protections in place for weapons being snuck into a facility. But as far as drones go, large events and football stadiums are monitored by police and maybe even the FAA for illegal drone flight, but they have limited resources for actually stopping someone who might have ill intentions, and they mostly just catch people who are unsafely flying over crowds of people for cinematic purposes. So how does this connect to Betaflight? One commenter put it nicely, and they said they have concerns. Their concerns are towards the technology as a whole, not towards Betaflight. And I think that this is the crux of the issue. Firstly, I think that Betaflight and iNav developers have committed no ethical error, especially since they could have never anticipated that their projects would be used in this way. They continue to develop them for hobbyists, as they always have, and I think highly of the developers for these projects. So what should be done moving forward? I have created a list of items that I think follow my concerns about this issue. Number one, Betaflight developers should continue to develop hobbyist software. They should also continue to not develop for warfare use. Number two, Betaflight developers should discontinue development of features like autonomous flight that can be used directly in warfare. While these features are fun for hobbyists, I believe the damage that they can inflict in the hands of a bad actor outweigh the benefit. Number three, all drone software and hardware should be sold without features that can be used right away for drone attacks. My recommendation is that, at the very least, make the barrier to entry for this hobby high for those who would use the drone unethically. Don't ship drones with GPSs enabled. Don't send aircraft with servos already mapped and ready to use. The video transmitter should be defaulted to the lowest output power possible for the least range. This hobby is somewhat difficult to get into, and it takes many people, including myself, several hours to figure out how to simply connect your drone to your controller the very first time you try to use it. I know it sounds silly, but I think it should stay that way. I think that this hobby should continue to have a high barrier to entry, and developments that make it easier should be skipped to avoid making it too easy for these drones to be used unethically. Number four, I think that countries should adopt restrictive legislation for drones like Japan has done. They discourage drones greater than 100 grams, which is about 3 ounces. So you really can't do very much damage with a drone this small. And they require that drones not fly within 30 meters of people. I think that it is vital for police and security teams to immediately identify malicious drones if they are in the air, especially as anti-drone technology is not commonplace. I think that this opinion will be an unpopular one, and I'm sorry that I'm encouraging restrictions of our freedoms. I think that the dangers of technology, aided by developments from open source software, should be carefully controlled to keep us all safe. Drone regulations and the ethics of drone technology as a whole is somewhat outside the scope of this project, but maybe one day I hope to tackle this subject as well. Finally, I think that developers and users should work alongside governments to educate and inform policies that help keep us safe and allow us to continue to enjoy the hobby we love. The FPV Freedom Coalition, which is fpvfc.org, is an excellent example of people that are working towards this, and I encourage you to check out their website if you're interested. And just to tie it all together for my class assignment, I was required to analyze and propose responses to at least 2 ethical dilemmas. I feel that I addressed the first ethical dilemma, which was evaluating if there's cause for concern from open source flight controller software being used in warfare. I did not find that Betaflight developers have acted unethically in any way, although I did find that there is cause for concern. I also addressed the dilemma of what should we do next, to which I outlined my 5 points above, which I addressed specifically to Betaflight developers, users, and then governments and manufacturers as well. So this concludes my thoughts. Please tell me what you think in the comments. I love hearing other people's opinions on the topic. Thank you so much for watching.